Yes, well, I can start this hour with some breaking news for you. It looks like GB News has kept one of Britain's worst Islamist terrorists behind bars. Zahid Iqbal plotted to blow up a British Army base in Luton by attaching explosives to a remote-controlled car. He was initially jailed for 16 years in 2013 alongside 3 other men. Well, in January, the Parole Board decided that Iqbal could be released 3 years before his maximum sentence. Other news outlets just rolled over and accepted this, like the BBC or some of the local press in Luton. But we said no. We don't think this Islamist lunatic should walk the streets. I mean, Iqbal had already been released in 2021, but was recalled to prison because they discovered he'd had a secret phone. The Parole Board heard from prison officers and other staff who see him most days behind bars, and they said there is absolutely no way this guy should be released. But because one psychologist said that he could be dealt with in the community, the Parole Board said, screw it, let him out. Well, we highlighted the issue on this show, and Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp then wrote to the Justice Minister David Lammy, and now we can confirm that Mr Lammy has written to the Parole Board and is telling them to reconsider their decision to release him. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said, "Public protection is our first priority. After careful consideration, the Deputy Prime Minister has asked the Parole Board to reconsider its decision to release Zahid Iqbal from prison." So hopefully, thanks to our work, we have kept a dangerous jihadi in prison where he belongs. And here at GB News, we've actually blocked several radical preachers from coming to Britain in the first place. We managed to get Mohammed Hoblos blocked from doing a speaking tour. He'd already been banned from the Schengen area for being too extremist and radical. He said that whilst all sins are bad, Muslim paedophiles who never miss prayer are better than the ones who do in the eyes of Allah. We managed to stop Mufti Mohammed Ibn Munir. He is on record spouting anti-Semitic rhetoric and discussing stoning adulterers in graphic detail. He wasn't allowed after we highlighted he was on his way to Britain. Over the last couple of years, we've reported dozens of human traffickers to the National Crime Agency, including those who use ISIS videos on social media. We've even reported a bloke who worked at an illegal migrant hotel who was posting with guns on social media. We really are doing our best to try to protect Britain, but sometimes it just feels like we're fighting a losing battle. Ginger Jihadi Ibrahim Roger Anderson has been allowed out on parole. We only found this out today. In 2021, Anderson was jailed for 7 years after pleading guilty to 10 counts of disseminating terrorist publications. He also admitted 4 charges of possession of terrorist publications after being unaware that the woman he was speaking to on Facebook and Telegram was actually a covert police officer. In 2016, he was jailed for 3 years for trying to drum up support for the Islamic State outside a Topshop in London's Oxford Street. And look, this is why you can't trust the authorities, in my opinion. Zahid Iqbal would have been released if it wasn't for GB News. So why on earth are the Parole Board so desperate to let these Islamists out of prison?
Are you looking to get into shape in 2026? If so, then you need the right soundtrack and the right earbuds to match. This video is sponsored by Raycon and their essential open earbuds. Well, unlike regular earbuds, these ones here sit just outside your ear canal, giving you clear sound, but you can still hear what's happening in the world around you. Trust me, they're super light, secure and comfortable with no slipping or soreness thanks to the multi-angular hook and multi-point connection. And with 8 hours of playtime and 36 more with the charging case, it means I only need to charge them once a week. Switching between devices is instant and I can go from my phone to my laptop without missing a beat. And Raycon has over 3 million customers worldwide. Their sound quality is right up there with premium brands, but at a fraction of the price. Plus, there's a 30-day happiness guarantee. The essential open earbuds are here to help you crush your New Year's resolutions. Head to buyraycon.com/GB News Open for 15% off site-wide.
And I'm joined now by the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. Chris, thank you very much. Tremendous to see you. It looks like you writing to David Lammy has actually paid off in this case.
Well, Patrick, thank you. I was delighted to work with GB News on this to try and prevent this despicable Islamist terrorist being released onto our streets early. It was an absolutely disgraceful, despicable decision by the Parole Board to let this dangerous man out early. This is a man on our screens now who attempted to murder British soldiers in cold blood because he is a deranged Islamist extremist, and he should stay in prison for the maximum possible length of time. The people responsible for managing him inside the offender management system said that he was dangerous, but inexplicably, the Parole Board decided to authorise his early release. I'm very grateful to you, Patrick, and GB News for highlighting this appalling case so effectively. And it was, I was delighted to then write to the Shadow Justice Secretary, urging him to stop this man's release. And we've heard today that has been successful. So I'm happy to work with GB News on any case like this to keep these dangerous lunatics in prison where they belong.
Well, look, no, thank you, seriously. And it is a massive, tangible benefit to society that this guy is not out on the streets. I suppose the downside of it, Chris, is that we shouldn't really have to do this, right? I mean, there was a bloke that we only found out today appears to have slipped through the net, the old Topshop Islamist. You know, if we'd have probably known about him getting released, we maybe could have highlighted that and maybe you'd keep them in prison. It's something very odd, I feel, going on with the Parole Board, Chris.
Well, it is very concerning, and something strange does seem to be going on. These decisions, you can't imagine how any rational person would ever reach these decisions. So I think there needs to be, frankly, a review by David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, into how the Parole Board is operating. He ought to review all of these decisions, particularly in relation to Islamist extremists, because the threat they pose is very severe. 94% of terrorist murders in the last 24 years, 94% were committed by Islamist extremists. MI5's counterterrorism caseload is something like 75% Islamist in nature. So given it is so dangerous to our society, I think these people should be kept in prison, frankly, for all of them, for the maximum amount of time possible. And David Lammy, should be conducting a review into why these early releases are happening. And he should frankly be putting a stop to it, not just in this one case, but actually in all cases, frankly, of Islamist terrorism. And while we're at it, people in this country who are not British citizens, but who express extremist views or support for violence or terrorism should frankly be kicked out of the country if they're not British citizens. We don't want people in this country who express support for extremism or violence. If they're not British citizens, they should be frankly kicked out and deported back to their country of nationality, their country of origin, because frankly, I think we've had enough of this kind of extremism in this country.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, look, thank you very much again. And, very, very grateful for you taking it up with David Lammy and for getting a result here. So much appreciated. It's Chris Philp there, is the Shadow Home Secretary. Right, let's get the thoughts on my panel then. We, of course, have GB News contributors Will Kingston and Connie Shaw and political commentator Jonathan Liss. Will, well, look, this seems like an absolute result, to be honest with you. I mean, this guy would be out now. And we've managed to keep him behind bars where he belongs, I think.
It is a good result, and well done to everyone at GB News for pushing this, but at the same time, he will still be out on the streets eventually. And this is the problem I have with these terrorism offences, is that if you plot to commit a terrorist offence, or if you actually do commit a terrorist offence, it should be life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. I think the problem with when we say the word terrorism, some people in the judiciary or amongst the Parole Board assume, well, you can be de-radicalised, do a dodgy online course or put Jared's poster up on your wall and suddenly, hey, you may suddenly embrace Western liberal democracy. And it doesn't work that way. I would be framing this around treason. There has been a treason law in this country since 1351, and I'd have no problem framing these terrorists as those who want to commit or actually do commit treason. Now, back in the day, you would execute someone for treason. Now, for better or worse, times have moved on, but at the very least, they should be in jail for the rest of their lives.
Will, you were saying yourself that you can't keep people in prison forever.
There is a distinction between these two cases we've just looked at. If you're at Topshop, trying to send out ISIS material, that is one thing, and I think we need to have that discussion. But this guy threatened to blow up, what was it? A
military base.
A military base. Yeah. In that instance, life in prison.
I think that you have to have a situation. Sorry, I hope I'm sort of jumping into Connie's time. But I think that we have in this country a system where you have whole life sentences, which is basically what you're proposing, for the absolutely most serious acts that have been committed already. So these are acts that have been carried out. And obviously any planning of any sort of terrorist attack is obviously horrendous and disgraceful in every way and needs to be punished. But we do have a system where we grade crimes according to severity, attempted murder is different from murder, etc. And I think that if you are just now going to be giving out whole life terms for things that, because not even murders get whole life terms.
Yeah. But one of my concerns specifically with this was that, so there are two people who basically work with, that look after this guy every single day. They had put in their notes to Parole Board, do not let this guy out, right? Just do not let him out. We see him every day. Don't even think about it. And then one psychologist pops up and goes, well, actually, you know, he's showing these green shoots of recovery here, and that maybe he can go back to Luton. And they've latched onto that. And then actually, we've pointed it out. We've ultimately had to go to David Lammy, who has then, been in a position where he has decided that he's got to take it up, and they'll reverse it, all being well. But it shouldn't take that, right? If there's so many more of these people we won't find out about until it's too late.
Well, it's not, sadly, Patrick, this whole thing isn't surprising. We know that as a country we have failed to grasp at Islamist extremism. Even recently, Fayez Magool said that it was an exclusive in The Telegraph, how even though he has worked with the Home Office talking out against Islamist extremism, his media appearances talking about this resulted in someone from the Home Office contacting him, suggesting that maybe he needs to think about what he's saying in the media. So that there is concerns about the way that this government, not this government in particular, but successive governments deals with it, not least because only 13% of prevent referrals are Islamist terrorism, despite the fact they are overwhelmingly the majority of MI5 open cases. But like you were saying, Will, there is a distinction between these two cases, and there is a debate as to whether this guy, Ibrahim Roger Anderson, should be released. Now, he was the one who was disseminating ISIS material, trying to radicalise other people. He hadn't actually plotted, as far as we know, to commit a terrorist act. However, what's very interesting about his case, and I think should send alarm bells around everyone if we weren't already extremely alarmed and should be, was that one, he was not born into Islam. He is a convert. He is also white British. It's very unlikely that he has ethnic ties to Islam. So we already have Muslims in Britain who are born into Islam being radicalised, but now we are seeing, or this case, it was actually happened about 10 years ago, converts to Islam who are being radicalised. He was born in Luton. We know that that is an area where there is radical Islam. We know that for a fact. He was arrested in 2014 after two other Muslims, they were women, I think they were sisters, told him that they disagreed with his views and thought they were extreme. They were subsequently told to go and die. So this case in general is concerning because of things I've already just said, but also the fact that normal Muslims who are not radicalised are so at risk. One of the groups that are most at risk from radical Muslims themselves, and another reason why the Islamophobia definition is an awful idea. 5 of whom on the working group to come up with that definition, all 5 of them, there's only 5, have links to Islamist organisations. So his story is particularly...
That was obviously based on our Free Speech Union report, I think, that you guys did there. When it comes to the ginger jihadi, and that's a conversation in itself, I think, why does it seem that a lot of these converts all seem to have red hair? I don't know why that is, but anyway, that was, he wanted to see the black flag of ISIS flying over Downing Street and all of that. But look, I do just think I'm going to look at the broader point here. There's been several what I would class as hate preachers that have been down to do these big speaking tours of Britain that we've managed to highlight, and then after we've highlighted it, they've been binned off. Similar things when it comes to these human traffickers. Again, we've managed to highlight them, highlight links to terrorism. The French police have raided the camps twice after we've tipped them off about certain stuff and found weapons. Then we've got this guy as well who would be out and about probably now looks like he won't be as well. And okay, that's good, and we can sit here and pat ourselves on the back, and there's that strap on the bottom of the screen there that says victory for GB News, and that's really nice. But actually, it shouldn't really be down to us to do all of this stuff, should it? This is what the security services are for.
Yeah, that's right. But unfortunately, there's a couple of things that are preventing them from doing that. One is ideological, in that continuously we have seen across this country that any sort of tolerance towards radical Islam can often be seen as, or you will avoid that because it can be seen as either being racist, the grooming gangs being the ideal example. And the other thing is as well, increasingly, tough action on radical Islam is not taken because of the growing number of Islamic people in the country, and particularly the left side of politics are afraid to take measures that are necessary because they think it will cost them votes. And that is something which, unfortunately, is becoming more prevalent.
Jonathan, do you agree with that, what Will said there?
Which bit of it?
Well, specifically the bit at the end, which is that we're not doing too much to tackle radical Islam, really. I mean, I suppose the other thing, a natural follow-up question I would ask you is, do you believe that somebody can be de-radicalised? Because at the moment that seems to be what a lot of these ones are centred around. That a psychologist is able to say, well, I think that there's a chance that this individual might be de-radicalised, so they can be let out early.
Patrick, I always have hope for people, and of course that it's possible to de-radicalise people. The better question is probably how likely is it? How much evidence is there that it can happen on a wide scale? Look, obviously, we know that there is a lot of stuff on the internet. People are being radicalised. We see, if you were to just arrive here from Mars and you didn't know anything about how history had worked, and you to look at the news and look at the world and see who's rich, who's poor, who gets bombed, who doesn't get bombed, all these things. These things can get manipulated by people to say there is a war on Muslim people, on brown people, or whatever. Even though obviously that's a radical oversimplification. But you look at what's happened in Gaza, for example, in the last 2 years, with the overwhelming support of our government and the US government, and people, and that is used by people to say our people are being attacked. And this is, I'm afraid, a very, very sad fact about how people are being radicalised online.
All right, well, there we go. Well, look, just to drag us back to the issue of that particular jihadi now rotting behind bars. If you're watching in prison, hello. And it looks like you'll be there for another few years, which is good, isn't it? But also, well done, David Lammy, though, for actually writing to the Parole Board, because he could have just ignored that, so fair enough. Anyway, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson has said the decision to release, this is the second jihadi, Ibrahim Roger Anderson, was made by the Independent Parole Board in 2025 after a thorough risk assessment. Terrorist offenders are subject to some of the strictest conditions and can be returned to prison immediately if they breach them. And a Parole Board spokesperson told GB News a panel will now carefully examine a huge range of evidence, including details of the original crime and any evidence of behaviour change, as well as explore the harm done and impact the crime has had on the victims. Parole reviews are undertaken thoroughly and with extreme care. Protecting the public is our number one priority. Well, the ball's in their court now, but they would be absolutely mad, I think, if they decided to let that guy out.